Welcome to the Andrew Vanech Show, hosted by the NWO. You know what? No. Got it. All right. Welcome to the Andrew Vanech Show, episode 12, 11, whatever. If you haven't kept count, neither have I. Today we're talking about pro wrestling. It's been requested by many of my subscribers, listeners, whatever you want to call them. And today we have from the Sports Hit List Wrestling Group, Andrew Slips. Andrew, how you doing?
What's up? I'm doing good. How you guys doing?
Doing good. And a local comedian in the New York City area who is also a huge, avid pro wrestling fan. Please welcome back John Fox. John, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you, man?
I'm doing good. So I brought you guys on. We're talking pro wrestling, and the reason why we're talking pro wrestling is this weekend coming up, April 10th to the 11th, is going to be WrestleMania. And for anybody who doesn't have a clue about wrestling or wants to, or is an avid wrestling fan, then you would know that WrestleMania is the event that was initially put on in 1985 and led to the big boom of pro wrestling fans worldwide. It was Hulk Hogan, Roddy Piper, the Iron Sheik, and that made way for guys like The Undertaker, Shawn Michaels, The Rock, Stone Cold, John Cena. WrestleMania was the event behind all of that. And this weekend is the 37th edition, I believe.
Yep, that's about right.
Now, when the pandemic started, everything shut down except pro wrestling. Pro wrestling kept it going. The only thing they did was they didn't allow fans, and they held it from their training center. Do you guys give props for WWE putting on a show during a difficult time?
Yeah, you gotta.
It didn't seem safe, but in a way, they do deserve props for it.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird time, and it was a weird few months, but I think fans eventually got used to it, and it's the unfortunate thing, it's a scripted program, so it's it's a little different than typical sports. Yeah,
but these guys are, and anybody who says wrestling is fake should just turn this off. It's scripted. The plot lines, the storyline, everything like that leads up to the match itself. Because when they get in the ring, they do things the three of us, I don't think any of us can do. Like, if you try to jump off a cage and get up and act like nothing happened, no, we're all heading to the ER. So, but at the same time, these guys don't get off days to begin with. These guys go 7 days a week, 365 days out of the year, where maybe the top guys get some time off. Or, maybe a few popular guys get off time because of who they are. They're on their way up. So, for a pandemic to hit and you find yourself still wrestling, how does that feel?
I mean, you got to think wrestling too now. I feel like, you guys tell me, what you think, but I feel like now more than ever, it's been in the mainstream, and it's been covered on ESPN, Bleacher Report, between Turner having
especially back in the territory days when it was considered a sport.
Right. It's almost like it feels like it's coming back to that in a way, where I feel like there was a pocket of time where, you'd call it fake, you'd call it dumb. But now, with all this mainstream media coverage, I feel like it's, back probably stronger than it has been.
Yeah. Cause it's it doesn't matter that we know all the terms and what goes behind closed doors.
Right.
Maybe even
because it's getting to a point where the athleticism is being more recognized.
Yes, they even in the video games now, it's you're going backstage and you're working on your promos, you're working on certain moves. It's just it's always been an open secret, always, but it's more emphasized now because it's not so much the storylines. It's all right, good guy versus bad guy, and it's more about the athleticism now.
I do always wonder, though, is it harder to keep kayfabe with social media?
Oh, yeah.
I think that's why when like social media like officially became a thing, that's when they started putting their Twitter handles in the graphic.
Exactly, yeah. And like if you looked at like the early days of Rusev and Braun Strowman on Instagram, like they come out as looking like unbeatable monsters. You go on their Instagrams, they look like guys you want to hang out with.
Yeah,
it's like a totally different environment.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially like the Fiends, you know, Bray Wyatt, he's taking pictures with his son, and meanwhile he's, you know, possessing Randy Orton on Raw. You know, it's like going back and forth.
Well, you know what I found interesting is that even like when like Eddie Guerrero passed away, they had every member of both SmackDown and Raw on the stage, with the exception of the Undertaker. And now I don't know if that had to do because his gimmick involves death, but the Undertaker has always had his gimmick was always like 24/7. Like you never saw him. Now that he's retired, now you see more of him on the outside doing interviews and stuff like that.
Yeah, but he's more looking like his old biker self in a way.
Well, outside of his gimmick, he like that was him. Like the American Badass was how he lives his life. He's a heavy motorcycle head.
He had I don't know if you guys watched, but I'm sure you guys watched the Last Ride documentary. He was talking about, you know, the feud with AJ. And I know last year was like that. They had that cinematic match, but he was saying like it was a combo of like Dead Man, combo of like his, you know, his real life self, and then the American Badass. And I think that was like a perfect way to like cap off his character, because it's you know, he can't really keep up the Dead Man shtick anymore with like the Fiend, and it's clearly, you know, that is clearly an act. But I think, you know, as guys just move on and they, you know, evolve, it's whatever's, you know, for the audience at the time.
What speaking of audience at the time, when did you guys fall in love with the product? Were you guys Attitude Era guys, or?
I watched a little Attitude Era, but my first live event was at Nassau for SummerSlam 02.
Awesome. Yeah,
so I saw Brock beat The Rock and Shawn Michaels come back.
Oh, that's awesome. I think, you guys are. It's funny. I know you guys are a little younger than me, but I didn't get into wrestling until like 98, 99. And the first match I ever watched was Kane Undertaker Inferno match. So I came into it pretty late in the game. I was, you know, at that point, 10, 12 maybe. But it's funny you mentioned SummerSlam. I went to the Raw the night after SummerSlam, where they decided to split the brands. Yeah, that was I remember that vividly, like Lesnar running away with the belt to go to SmackDown.
Oh, so that was that night. Okay.
Yeah.
I used to watch it sporadically as a kid, and then eventually in 2004, I started watching it more weekly. In fact, I actually started watching around WrestleMania 20, so I saw like the build up between Benoit, HBK, Triple H triple threat match, which I still
best WrestleMania main event.
That was one of the best. Yeah. That's one of the best matches of all time, when Benoit has the sharpshooter locked in and HBK came out of nowhere with a
super kick
with the sweet chin music. Like that was like the story. That was the story in action for me. Mm-hmm. But my first event was SummerSlam 2004 in Toronto, and like that was also bundled with a Niagara Falls trip as a kid. So I got to see Randy Orton versus Benoit and Taker chokeslam JBL through the limo.
Oh, that was that. Yeah, that was good. That was.
I was actually the last ride of 2 months later in Newark.
In East Rutherford, Continental
East
Airlines.
Rutherford, yes, it was in East Rutherford.
That was my second live event.
I think
that was a good pay-per-view, though.
Yeah,
the Raw after SummerSlam, the one I mentioned, that was the first Raw I went to. But I had gone to like one other or two other like house shows in like 2000s. I don't remember who was fighting or, you know, what the card was, but I just remember I was super high up at MSG. This is like way before Barclays and way before like the pay-per-views were like even in my grasp of like, you know, affordability.
Yeah. But back in those days, Raw and SmackDown having two separate rosters I thought was better for what WWE was trying to do, because you created competition within yourself. It was guys you never heard of, like putting on great shows leading into like the main event, leading into the Triple H matches or the Undertaker. Like one of my personal favorites came from the Cruiserweight was Billy Kidman. Shooting Star
Billy
Press.
Kidman was great. Yes.
Billy Kidman was one of my favorites. That whole Cruiserweight division.
I also think part of the reason why they separated the brands was because of the influx of talent that came in with the purchase of ECW and WCW.
Yeah.
So it's like you got more guys to use, and I think because of like NXT today is why they had to separate Raw and SmackDown again. You got it because you got to keep guys on TV, getting them over.
Yeah, it's always like a tricky game like they play with, like, you know, they separate the roster, and then, you know, if one show dips in ratings, they start throwing guys, you know, to either show, and that's when the roster split doesn't become, you know, has no more meaning. But I think like now with Fox and USA, I think that's like they're clearly separate channels, and you have to make sure that your roster stays separate. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, before the Fox move, that's when everything started being weird, when you can jump ship from show to show.
That's what I mean. It was like I know when it was on USA on like Tuesday nights, I thought SmackDown was pretty entertaining, but the guys would go back and forth anyway.
There really hasn't. I know they've done it again, but there really hasn't been a brand identity in the new draft split, because it's like all they honestly have to do is like switch the lights from red to blue. Whereas SmackDown had the fist on the stage. You know, there were guys that had the SmackDown feel to them, and then there were guys that had the Raw feel to them. And then they would do the draft every 2 years. So, and it was like a shocker when you saw Randy Orton show up on SmackDown or Kurt Angle show up on Raw.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a money saver. I think that's the only reason why they did it.
Yeah, there's no like, I've said this before. It's like, what's the point of watching Raw or SmackDown? And like you said, they jump ship. Because like it's like, oh, okay, I don't have to watch 2 nights out of the week.
That's the issue. Like, you know, I mean, back then it was different. You're right. Like each show had its own identity, and like I know they keep them somewhat separate now, but it's like you're trading the same people anytime they have like these like this yearly draft show. It's like trading Rollins, Rey Mysterio, and Kevin Owens for, you know, Sami Zayn, someone else, and someone else. Like you're keeping the same storylines just on different shows. So
yeah, that was weird.
Add anything else to it. I mean, I don't know if those are the exact guys, but I distinctly remember Seth Rollins and Rey still keeping their like feud up between the Raw and SmackDown switch this last year. So you can't.
Yeah, they kind of dragged it out.
Yeah.
Now I mentioned Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit, and that was a dark time for us as wrestling fans because we were young and these were guys that we loved. And then like the ugly reality of what these guys go through behind closed doors was on full display. And, you know, there were a few guys in the 80s and 90s who unfortunately went before their time in their 40s and 50s. So, like, has WWE taken, like, the precautions, is, like, keeping their wrestlers safe and letting these guys, you know, have the time off they need, or giving them, like, the medical attention they need after risky moves? So that's
a tough one.
Yeah.
Especially with literally everything we learned from Dark Side of the Ring with what happened with Guerrero and Benoit. Especially part of the reason Benoit went insane was because Eddie died. I was like watching this and just thinking to myself, I didn't think at that time that this was going to lead up to this.
No, because it's like, because I knew as a kid that Eddie had problems, like, and like that him winning the WWE champion was like him like finally overcoming everything. Like, you know, it's again scripted, but you know, it's not. You have to earn the right to have that scripted for you.
Oh
yeah,
yeah. It's so.
There's like, think about it. I mean, there's a reason why you remember Eddie Guerrero winning the title from Lesnar at No Way Out before WrestleMania. Like the fact that, you know, people still remember that, you know, decade, you know, and a half later is, you know, it's a testament to like, you know, the fact that although it's a scripted show, guys can essentially get themselves over. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's always that's kind of a loaded statement, but just one other thing, like, you know, when it comes to like the health of wrestlers, like now, it's pretty cool to see guys like, like Christian, Edge coming back. Guys like Orton still around, AJ still around. I mean, they're relying on these guys, to hold up the product, even though you still have, you guys that are, 22, 23 that are, incredibly athletic, and they're keeping up. These guys that are older, keeping up with this younger generation. So I think that says something to like the general health of, the general way that the guys take care of themselves today.
And the women.
And the women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think the money has something to do with it too, because you don't got to. I remember, I forgot who said. I think it was Jimmy Hart. He said this. He said, "You don't have a pension in wrestling, so you got to." And Bret Hart said, like, the pay is too good, despite your health issues. You would have to come back because the payday is just too much to turn down.
Mm-hmm.
I think, fun fact, I think Bret Hart is the only professional wrestler to guest star on The Simpsons.
Probably.
But you would think like Hulk Hogan or John Cena or The Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what you would be interested in? Did you see, but when WrestleMania was in New York 2 years ago, did you see John Oliver's piece on the WWE?
I did. That was very well done.
Yeah.
It was a very well done thing.
That showed a very ugly side to the corporate decisions of the
And
WWE.
that was before Dark Side of the Ring came out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting too how polarizing a figure Vince McMahon is. There are people who love him, and then there are people who just absolutely hate him.
Oh yeah.
And you know what's funny? He just takes it, and then he just plays it out in the ring when he shows up as like the authority figure once every now and then.
Yeah, that happened since Montreal over 20 years ago.
Yeah, the Montreal screw job.
The episode of Dark Side of the Ring with Owen Hart, that always that always gets to me, because there's when Owen Hart's his wife his widow is talking about how like the Hart family essentially like ran to Vince McMahon when this all happened. It was just it's a wild story, and it shows like like you said, it's polarizing. Like some people love him, some people think he's just the absolute scum of the earth. But
the whole clip thing was news to me. I was like, that's what really did. They wanted to save money, and that's essentially how he died. It's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
When now to bring it back to a positive light and to making the product itself work, because you have good guys, bad guys. You have bad guys like JBL and Triple H and Christian and Edge, and then you have bad guys like Simon Dean. You guys remember Simon Dean, the fitness guru? Like things like, or like things that don't necessarily work. And what makes it work is the fans. So without fans there, or what is it, the Thunderdome?
Yeah, I think
has WWE done a great job, like letting not having fans there, but having it still somehow feed into the product, because that's honestly what makes the show. It's the same. It's the same thing for years and years and years. It's the fans that jump into the character, that jump into like the in-ring moments. This all comes down to the fans. I don't know if you guys ever see. I also
think the fake crowd noise, though.
Not to cut you off, but
go for it.
Did you ever see Ready to Rumble?
No,
no, I haven't.
Yeah.
You got homework, John. It's the only professional wrestling movie, and it's David Arquette and James Caan's son from Hawaii Five-0. And
cool.
And Ralph Cifaretto from The Sopranos plays the bad guy. He's like the Eric Bischoff.
Yeah, it's a great movie. You got some cameos in there too. You got like Booker T and I think like a really young John Cena's in it too. Like not
really,
he doesn't have an actual role. That was like when I think he was like still an amateur. I think he may have been auditioning with WCW. But
yeah, it's a WCW movie.
Yeah, it's a pro WCW movie for sure. But yeah, that's
yeah, highly recommend, John. But what were you saying before I cut you off 20 times?
No, I was saying though with the Thunderdome, like and what Impact has been doing with fake crowd noise. I just think you can't force the reaction. You have to make that reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and like when you're forced to like the cheering or booing, you might not like the storyline that goes with it. And I think that's been a problem with the Thunderdome, especially on Raw, because Raw just drags out for like 3 hours.
Yeah. I think it's if I'm a performer and I see the faces on the screen, I think I feel better that I know that people are actually watching what I'm putting out there. To be in the performance center with nobody there, I mean, even the NXT crew has it. I think that's a good mesh of like having the NXT call-ups and some of the virtual fans in attendance. Like that's pretty cool, but still it's, you know, kind of a faked, you know, they're telling everyone beforehand, I'm sure, who to cheer for and who to boo
like
for.
This is when you're supposed to cheer. These are the faces. It's like that still doesn't do anything. Like we're in a day now where if we like something a heel does, it's perfect. Like when RVD was a heel on his end run in Impact, it was hilarious because he was just being himself.
I'm glad you just brought up Impact because in recent years, a new promotion has arose called AEW. Now, I don't watch wrestling as much as I used to. I come back between the Royal Rumble and Mania because this is when the WWE writers are on the top of their game. But, you know, after WCW and ECW became part of WWE, TNA came around, but TNA never really got that appeal unless somebody like really popular went there. TNA never had the appeal for me. And then there was another promotion out there. Oh, Ring of Honor, but Ring of Honor, New Japan
kind of faded out.
Yeah, they've had their moments in the sun, but again, you're going up against the Titan. AEW, on the other hand, manages to attract somewhat of a populous audience, and Chris Jericho is a part of that. Cody Rhodes is a part of that. Dean Ambrose wrestling under his real name, John Moxley's a part of that. So why are people starting to watch more and more of AEW? Is it because it has more of the old school appeal?
I think that, but there's also like you want to see like a bit of sense of freedom, like nothing's forced, because the wrestlers do have more of a say than what you have in the WWE. I think that really plays into it. And you're seeing like a lot of guys that like their movesets aren't limited, especially with some people when they go up to the main roster. I think that's a big appeal of it.
I think I also have to. I think the like what does it for me with AEW. The reason why I enjoy it, you know, is because it's only 2 hours a week. And I know when I tune in, I'm going to get a good wrestling product. There's, you know, that's also a downside because there's not a ton of variety and not a ton of, you know, surprise and shock when it comes to AEW. Like if I watch AEW, I think their pay-per-views are built up better than WWE.
This is only 4 a year.
Yeah, because there's only 4 a year. And they actually build up the stories, you know, there's a lot of long-term storytelling. But downside is, you know, you are going to be waiting a month or two before you finally see, you know, two guys or two women like finally go at it. And then I know like this past pay-per-view, Kenny Omega and John Moxley had their like barbed wire explosion match. And then when you're paying customer, you've been following this storyline for months, and then that's the end. It's like you're going to get scrutinized for it. Like you got to make sure that these things go off without a hitch. But
yeah, I think there's two really big problems with AEW though, but that's something you can work out over time because you're a new company that opened up during the pandemic.
Right.
So like that's something you can work with over time. And I think it's a lot with the younger guys, the guys that are like fresh off of the indie circuit. Like there's some stuff that like looks a little more fake, like like with the way that they do the hits, and then the with what Jim Ross brought up with crowding up for a dive.
Yeah,
he has a point. In my opinion.
I agree. Yeah, and especially when there's I get that that's supposed to happen. Like, you know, obviously the guys are protecting each other, but when you're standing around waiting for someone to fall on you, it kind of takes you out of the experience a little bit as a fan.
Exactly. Also, AEW uses wrestling terms on live television, which kind of breaks away the illusion. You've noticed it too.
Oh,
It
yeah.
breaks away the illusion of reality and art. Like I've heard the Young Bucks like look at the Acclaimed, two New York guys. They looked at the Acclaimed and said, hey, hasn't someone done your gimmick already? And I'm like, what the
Yeah.
And then Kip Sabian's wedding, like they used kayfabe in the wedding vows. I'm like, what are you doing?
That takes me out of it. And it almost like it's like, I understand this is for like a very, an audience that really appreciates like wrestling as an art form, but there has, you have to keep some of that, to yourself and not pretend that.
It's like, we know what it is, but don't tell it to everyone else.
There's a lot of fourth wall breaks in AEW, apparently.
Yeah, there is a lot of fourth walls.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of just drags you away because it's like it's kind of like reminding you that oh, by the way, this isn't real, this is all scripted. And I'm like, if I wanted like to see that while watching wrestling, you would just get a girlfriend that will just constantly yell at you and tell you it's fake.
With WrestleMania being this weekend, for the hardcore WWE fans watching and or listening, are there any matches in particular you're looking forward to? For me, I've been a big fan of the Randy Orton, Bray Wyatt.
That one's going to be good.
I love the fact that Alexa Bliss kind of plays the mind games. I always joke. I joked somewhere in I think in the wrestling hit list chat that Alexa Bliss, Randy Orton is a reminder of how my ex lives in my head rent free.
Oh man, that's good.
I'm not repeating.
I know it's divided into two nights. I was looking at it before we jumped on, and I think it looks like night 2 to me is the night with some more of like the bigger matchups. Not to say that night 1 doesn't have a good lineup, but night 2 I think is Edge, Bryan, and Roman Reigns. I think that's probably the
big one.
Yeah.
I assume like the bigger matches are going to be on night two to begin with.
McIntyre and Lashley, that's going to be a good match.
That'll be a fun match to watch.
I just don't think it was built up in time.
I honestly wanted the Orton, not to come back to the Orton Wyatt feud, is that I wanted it to be a Firefly Funhouse match again, where we get to see the history of Randy Orton, and you see RNN breaking news from Randy Orton, cool. And then the Legend Killer, and maybe like Bray Wyatt flips on him and says, "You're the Legend now, and I'm the Legend Killer."
Dude, I think WWE is going to catch wind of that. You might be looking for royalties. That's pretty good.
WWE's always looking for writers on LinkedIn.
Yeah, and but now they're taking off like half the content that's offensive on Peacock. So I guess I can't watch anything from the Attitude Era.
Yeah, I let my WWE Network subscription expire.
That's fair.
I decided to renew just for like it's like 4 months for $10, which isn't a bad deal. I told my girlfriend it's extra episodes of The Office if you want to watch them.
I've seen them all. They're on Comedy Central every
That's
day.
Good.
Yeah, I might as well.
That is really good. I got episodes of The Office.
But yeah, that's a weird thing too. Is like maybe they should have been like a parental advisory.
I know.
Yeah, like they used to do.
Yeah.
I love the memes going around now where it's like there's an NBC intern about to see Mae Young give birth to a hand.
Vince McMahon is going to make Trish Stratus walk on all fours and bark like a dog.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Oh, my God. The dark moment.
They took off that scene of her taking off her towel or something like that.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm sure.
Oh, I follow a page on Instagram that shares like all like these like golden moments from the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression Era. And they had a clip of Val Venus in the ring going, "I came, I saw, and I came again."
That's good.
Oh,
my God. They definitely took out the scene where they chopped off his dick. when Kite and Ty chopped off Val Venus's dick.
Choppy pee. Oh my god.
Yeah, choppy pee.
Do you believe this was on TV?
Oh yeah, and the wrestling match took place at Funtime USA in Long Island.
No, that was in Brooklyn. I thought that was in Sheepshead Bay.
Oh, that was in Sheepshead. Oh
yeah,
Funtime
USA. I've only been there once.
Yeah, I haven't been there in a long time. I've only been there like a couple of times.
I keep forgetting about
it for a little bit.
They did that at Funtime USA. It's a hardcore championship match.
It's a storage facility now on Knapp Street in Sheepshead Bay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think what's it called? Crash Holly avoided all those mean people that worked the slide. Like that was incredible.
Goes into the ball pit. I only went there once as a kid, so I'm glad I made it there once, and like I could be like, oh my gosh, there was a WWE fight in this. What can they? They have the 24/7 belt, and I know like COVID.
That's just. I think that's more to get celebrities involved in wrestling now.
Yeah, I like
Bad Bunny.
And the C lineup.
Yeah.
But I was trying to.
Miz is going from WWE champion. I mean, I know he was only a transitional champion, so no one looked bad. But I like how he's going up against Bad Bunny on Saturday night appropriately.
The Miz.
Yeah.
The Miz is reminds me of like a modern day Roddy Piper. I like the Miz.
I love the Miz. Miz might be one of my. I'm in this other Facebook wrestling group that I just got out of because it was way too toxic. People just hate on each other constantly, and I'm like, guys, this is wrestling. And someone was like really upset that Miz won the WWE belt, and I said the fact that you're upset is why he's such a good heel. And he's like, no, it's not the point. He's not a good champion. I'm like, no, that's the point. Is he's not a good champion.
No, he's been around. You know, I used to not like him because I always thought he was like the poster boy for like the ending of the Ruthless Aggression era. Yeah. But then like his character had a lot of development where I'm like, you know what? I like the Miz. He's got in-ring personality. He's got personality outside the ring. Like he's constantly doing stuff for the WWE. That's another thing is like fans are back, will be back at Mania, which is great. But it's the fans themselves that made me not want to go to live events anymore because like the three of us would go, we'd have a great time, we'd watch a great show. And then like we're either in front of like screaming kids, which I got no problem with because, you know, they're getting into the fandom. You know, like it's whatever. Yeah. It's the guys that are like older than us that are like screaming like those little kids. And I'm like, yeah, dude, are you serious right now?
My God. And like I always feel if you bring a championship to an event, you have to defend it.
Yeah, I have friends that are like that too.
Yeah.
I have one.
There's like wrestling fans that are doing couples costumes.
My God. That only works on Halloween, but the only title belt I have that was real and is somewhere in my room is the John Cena United States spinner belt.
That is pretty cool.
It's beat to shit. It's been around. It's the plate still spins, but like the screw on the back is gone. The leather is like all crushed up. But that's my title. You got to fight me for it.
All right.
Triple threat match at Mania. We're running out of time. Do you guys have anything you want to plug?
I'm good.
I got one.
For it.
Yeah, so me and my co-producer Meg Felling, we run a comedy show called Peer Pressure Comedy, and we're doing a show at Crystal Lakes in Williamsburg, April 26th, 8 p.m. for a charity called the Ali Forney Foundation. We got a couple people, you know, like we got Jay Jordan from The Tonight Show and Comedy Central, got Usama Siddiqui, who was on America's Got Talent last season, and we also got Maddie Smith from Wild 'N Out.
Wow. Sounds like a pretty good lineup. Yeah. Awesome. That's it for us today. Check out the Sports Hit List. Follow me on Twitter and YouTube. Enjoy WrestleMania. We got more episodes coming out soon. Keep it near to the ground. I'm Andrew Vanech. Take care.